Denver Broncos safety Justin Simmons missed Wednesday's practice with a knee sprain and is considered day-to-day. Could this impact his status for Sunday's game against the Tennessee Titans? Plus, could the Broncos maybe be a little bit unorthodox this week as they look to stop Derrick Henry? We tell you what they could do as well this week. Not to mention, we dive into the Wednesday practice report, some injuries impacting the Broncos, specifically at receiver alongside Justin Simmons as well. What's Dremont Jones' future indicate here for Denver? We dive into that and much more in today's brand new episode, Locked On Broncos.
You are Locked On Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, Broncos country? Welcome into a brand new episode of Locked On Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much to everybody in Broncos country for tuning in and making Locked On Broncos your first listen of the day, every single day, free and available everywhere you get your podcast in audio format, or whether you watch us on YouTube. Do us a favor, hit that subscribe or that follow button so you never miss a day's worth of Denver Broncos news, content, coverage every single day, all year long, from the South Stands to the end zone. I'm your host, as always, Cody Rourke, Broncos reporter for Mile High Sports. I cover the team every single day in person at practice. I cover every home and away game as well for this Broncos football team, and we're bringing you Wednesday's practice report here on Locked On Broncos. And some interesting news and notes here. The biggest story of the day for this Broncos team as we head into Thursday, where the Broncos will continue practice. Justin Simmons missed Wednesday's practice as he deals with a knee sprain. According to Broncos head coach Nathaniel Hackett, he is considered day-to-day. Now, this is worth making mention of as well. When you look at the safety position, the Broncos on Tuesday, they elevated veteran safety Anthony Harris to the active roster. Keep in mind, just a couple weeks ago, Caden Stearns was placed on injured reserve as he continues to battle a hip injury that's been bugging him since the start of training camp. So if Justin is unable to go in any way, shape, or form, it'll be very interesting to see how the Broncos maybe look to fill things in. I imagine it would be a combination of Kareem Jackson, PJ Locke, potentially. I know he's battling a little bit of a hamstring injury right now. And then Anthony Harris could potentially be looking at maybe getting a start in a situation like that. But we'll continue to monitor Simmons' status throughout the week here as the Broncos prepare for the Tennessee Titans. But some interesting things coming out of Wednesday's practice. Let's start off here with Dre'Mont Jones in his fourth season as a member of the Denver Broncos, and is very, very dominant on the interior this season. He's the leading sack artist right now for this Broncos team after they traded Bradley Chubb away to the Miami Dolphins last week at the NFL trade deadline. Dre'Mont Jones was asked about his future because earlier last week after the trade deadline, George Paton had brought up that Dre'Mont is a core player and they're looking forward to maybe taking care of getting him signed to a contract extension at the end of the season. Dre'Mont, opened up a little bit about kind of, how salary cap gets created in an instance where Bradley Chubb was traded and things like that. But Dre'Mont, playing really good football right now, was asked about his status, where he's at, and he says, this is fourth year Dre'Mont right now. And then when asked about his future with the team, he says, I'm here now. So this could be a little bit of a negotiation ploy for him, just kind of him taking a firm stance. Dre'Mont's always been a straight shooter type of guy, though, right? He's not going to pull any punches, and he's been very open. Like, the loss of Bradley Chubb for a guy like Dre'Mont Jones, who was so close with Chubb, that hurts from a personal standpoint, and obviously hurts from a football standpoint, because those two guys created a lot of pressure together. They opened things up for one another. So, yeah, I mean, that is a sore point, I think, for a guy like Dre'Mont, because, the guy that he views as a brother, not just on the football field, but off the field, is no longer there. And ultimately, at the end of the day, everyone understands it's a business, and I think that for a guy like Dre'Mont, he values loyalty in a sense, and I think it's going to be one of those situations where he wants the Broncos to prove to him, like, hey, show me that you want me. Show me that you value me, because trading away a core player, because I will say George Paton did come out before the NFL trade deadline and said about Bradley Chubb, Bradley's one of our core players. We have no interest in trading any of our core players at this point in time. And then what happens a day or two later, core player gets traded, obviously a guy who is a captain. So I think that the business side of the NFL, often at times it does get in the way of some things, and we'll see if it changes maybe the way that Dre'Mont feels about maybe wanting to come back to Denver. It's an interesting topic of discussion and something that Broncos country, I'm eager for your thoughts. So make sure if you're listening on your favorite audio podcasting platform, or whether you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you comment on the YouTube video, or make sure you tweet me on Twitter at CodyWorkNFL, at Locked On Broncos. But let's transition now to another interesting part of this week, right? Everyone's been talking about the main storyline. How can the Denver Broncos slow down Derrick Henry? That is a question that many defensive coordinators probably stay up a lot of nights when they're playing the Tennessee Titans. They're game planning for it. How are we going to do that? And I think when you look at where the Broncos have been, they've had some inconsistencies with their run defense, giving up some big gains to Travis Etienne, not to mention giving up a big game to Josh Jacobs, really getting Josh Jacobs on the right track for this season in that first matchup in Week 4. Denver's run defense, I would just say, has been inconsistent. There's been games they've held Austin Eckler to 36, 37 total yards rushing. So they've been able to clamp down on really good running backs. Derrick Henry presents you with a little bit more of an interesting challenge because of how physically built he is and how fast he is for a guy of his size and his stature. Now, for me, here's something that I would say. Do not be surprised if you see the Broncos come out this week, really with the emphasis of having, maybe 5 down linemen, right? You're going to have your 2 outside linebackers, 3 down linemen. Don't be surprised they take a defensive back out and add another linebacker, right? Kind of that old school kind of just plug and play there. It could be a 3-3 stack, could be a 4-2-5. We could see a multitude of different things, but do not be surprised if we see the Broncos add an additional linebacker on the field alongside Josie Jewell and Jonas Griffith. Maybe they can find a way to get Alex Singleton on the field with those guys at the same exact time, especially when you're playing a guy like Derrick Henry, because the way that the Titans play you, they want to hit downhill. They want to hit inside the A and the B gap, but they also want to run stretch plays. They want to get to the outside because a guy of that size, nobody expects to move as fast and as physical as Derrick Henry is, and he is not a guy that you can bring down on first contact. So if you get a clean shot, if you're the first defensive guy, this is me going back to my coaching days, you have to stick him, and you have to hold on for dear life and let everybody come and rally and tackle. Unless you get leverage. We've seen Josie Jewell get underneath, play a blitz design perfectly back in 2020 during the pandemic year where the Broncos had that home opener there, and he stuck Derrick Henry for a loss there. This was really the game we saw Josie Jewell emerge as a really good player for the Denver Broncos. That right there, I think, is something that Broncos country needs to keep their eye on. How do they deploy a game plan to slow down or limit what Derrick Henry can do? And a bigger question, who is going to be the quarterback? Is it going to be Ryan Tannehill making his return from an ankle injury, or is it going to be Malik Willis, who can also hurt you with his legs on the read option game? A lot of interesting angles to present. We'll obviously hear from the coordinators this week for this Broncos team. We'll have a complete recap here on Locked On Broncos. But Broncos country coming up here in just a moment. We're going to dive into Wednesday's practice report from an injury standpoint. Obviously, we mentioned Justin Simmons being day-to-day with the knee strain. There's other players who popped up, including a key player at the wide receiver position. We'll dive into that and much more coming up here in just a moment. But this episode is brought to you by SimpliSafe. And did you know that over the holidays, property crimes like burglaries and package thefts, they spike nationally? That's why our friends at SimpliSafe Home Security are offering 50% off their award-winning security system so that more families can feel safe and secure this holiday season. Order your SimpliSafe system for half off today and enjoy advanced security and greater peace of mind this holiday season. And in an emergency, 24/7 professional monitoring agents use Fast Protect technology exclusively from SimpliSafe to capture critical evidence and verify that the threat is real so you can get priority police dispatch. So you can get priority police response. SimpliSafe is whole home security with advanced sensors for every room, window, and door, HD security cameras for inside and out, and smarter ways to detect motion that alert you only when a threat is real, and even hazard sensors that detect fires, floods, and other threats to your home. 24/7 professional monitoring services cost less than $1 a day, less than half the price of ADT's traditional professionally installed system. With the top-rated SimpliSafe app, stay in complete control of your system anytime, anywhere, arm or disarm, unlock for a guest, access your cameras, or adjust system settings. And don't miss your chance to save big on the only security system I recommend. Get 50% off any new SimpliSafe system at simplisafe.com/LockedOnNFL today. This is their biggest discount of the year, so don't wait. That's simplisafe.com/LockedOnNFL. There's no safe like SimpliSafe. And our good friends over there at PrizePicks. And PrizePicks is daily fantasy sports done right. With the PrizePicks app, you choose 2 to 5 players that you're focused on heading into the week. These players will have a projection that's set by PrizePicks, and you simply choose whether or not they will have more or less than their PrizePicks projection, which could allow you to win 10 times your money on any entry. There's no competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections that are available. Download the PrizePicks app or go to PrizePicks.com to sign up today and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter promo code LOCKEDON at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. All right, Broncos country, continue on today's Wednesday Practice Report podcast here on Locked On Broncos, free and available everywhere you get your podcast in audio format, or whether you're watching us on YouTube. Thank you so much for making Locked On Broncos your first listen of the day. Injuries are the name of the game all around the National Football League, and the Denver Broncos have been one team that's been impacted by just a wide variety of injuries. We're talking about some freak injuries, soft tissue injuries, so on and so forth. And the Broncos are going into Sunday's game against the Tennessee Titans with some statuses in question that'll be worth monitoring on Thursday's practice and Friday's practice before the team travels to Nashville on Saturday for Sunday's game. It's going to be an 11 a.m. Mountain Time kickoff if you're in Denver. I'll be in Nashville covering the game as well. You can check out my coverage here, Locked On Broncos, and also at milehighsports.com. But in terms of the injury status, we already opened up today's show with Justin Simmons, obviously the biggest story for them, day to day with a knee strain, and we'll see his status on Thursday. We'll see it on Friday. He did not participate in Wednesday's practice. Some other players that joined him on the DNP list, we're taking a look at Baron Browning, the Broncos' starting edge rusher, who's been out the last couple of weeks with a hip flexor and an injury he sustained against the New York Jets. There is some hope that Baron Browning can play this week for the Broncos, but there is no guaranteed certainty that that will be the case. As our good friend Mike Kliss of 9 News has said, it will be close as it pertains to Baron Browning. I think one big thing to watch on Thursday, does he return on a limited basis? If he's a DNP on Thursday, we're monitoring Friday. Does he at least return on a limited basis on Friday? If he's a DNP on Friday, that more than likely means he will not play on Sunday. So if you're a Broncos fan, you're trying to figure out what's going on with Baron Browning, monitor the DNP status. I'll have you covered as well on Twitter at Cody Rourke NFL as I attend practice. Offensive tackle Cam Fleming's got a quad injury as well, and Nathaniel Hackett gave us a little bit of an update earlier this week and kind of just mentioned that Cam Fleming is eager. He's kind of ahead of schedule. He's eager to get back out there, but the Broncos are taking the cautious approach. And in my opinion, if you believe that Cam Fleming gives you more value at left tackle going forward in the long term, maybe you want to make sure that he's fully healthy and ready to go. So that's why I think the Broncos will and should start Calvin Anderson at the left tackle position here this week for the Broncos. Now, I will say this, being at Wednesday's practice, watching the individual drills, we get to see team stretch, we get to see a little bit of Indy, and then we don't get to view the rest of practice from that standpoint. It is worth noting, KJ Hamler did pop up on the injury report for the Denver Broncos with a hamstring injury, which limited him in practice. Now, we saw him at the very beginning of practice during individual drills. He was running routes, doing the route tree there, so something must have happened a little bit after we were viewing practice. You know, we're not allowed to view the entirety of it, so something must have happened in one of those periods where the hamstring kind of caught him in a sense. So now it'll be very interesting to see how this impacts his status this week. But it is worth mentioning, if KJ Hamler is unable to go in any way, shape, or form on Sunday against the Tennessee Titans, we could see a little bit more Kendall Hinton, but we could also see undrafted rookie free agent Jalen Virgil, who was active and did dress for the first time this season in London against the Jacksonville Jaguars. That could add a little bit of a wrinkle into what the Broncos want to do. And you know what? You've had the bye week. You've had this week to continue to get practice reps as well. Jalen Virgil could maybe make his debut and where we can actually see him on the field with the offense. It is a possibility. But then again, we will continue to monitor KJ Hamler's hamstring throughout the week and see if it's something that will linger. Hopefully that's not the case, because with a guy who's as fast as KJ, you do run into some of these soft tissue hamstring injuries. So we'll monitor this and we'll give you updates here on the Locked On Broncos podcast going forward. A list of players including Handler who were limited as well. Essang Bassey, who's just coming off of a hamstring injury himself several weeks ago. He was limited in practice, which is a little bit of a good sign. I had a chance to talk with him in the locker room and he said that the hamstring's feeling better. This is the first time something like that has ever happened to him, but he's been a key special teams guy for the Broncos at the jammer position covering gunners, and he said that he's really found himself being very comfortable in that role there, and he likes it, and that's why Dwayne Stukes views him as one of the top special teams players on the unit there, and they've definitely missed him the last couple of weeks because he's been a big proponent of springing guys like Montreal Washington up in the punt return game, both Essang Bassey and Mike Boone. Mike Boone was off on the side field, was not participating as well in practice, was going through the rehab process there. But it is worth mentioning some good news. Randy Gregory, not in a helmet, not in a jersey, just in standard team-issued gear, was on the side field going through stretches and was getting acclimated in a sense. He should return here in the next couple of weeks, maybe even several weeks at this point as the Broncos ramp him up, and maybe they get him back at just the right time going forward with some of the tough opponents that the Denver Broncos will have to face. PJ Locke was limited as well with a hamstring injury. I talked with PJ, and he said it's just something he's just going to continue to work on. He thinks he's going to be good. He played through it in the Jacksonville Jaguars game, so I would not imagine that this is going to impact him as well this week for the Tennessee Titans. But Broncos country, thank you so much for tuning in to today's Locked On Broncos bonus podcast, a practice report from Wednesday in the Valley. We get you covered here every single day here on Locked On Broncos. Make sure you check out the crossover episode with Tyler Rowland of Locked On Titans. He and my co-host Sarah Bettinger sat down and they previewed Sunday's game. That drops on Thursday on your favorite audio podcasting platforms. Also available right now on YouTube a day early for those who are interested. We'll have you covered on Friday with keys to victory as well as the updated final practice report as well for this Broncos team. I'm on the road on Saturday to Nashville. Broncos country, thank you so much for rocking with us, making us your first listen of the day. We'll see you tomorrow for a brand new episode, Locked On Broncos.